Hello everyone, and welcome to Spa-Francorchamps, where very unusually, as was the case yesterday, the sun is shining. You can't always rely on that here in Belgium. We're about to get the Ferrari Challenge UK final qualifying session of the season underway. Actually, the tension and the kind of apprehension there is down here in the paddock and in the pit lane is quite palpable. And with me is Fulvio Musi, who's very kindly agreed to speak to me because, of course, your driver, Paul Hogarth, is one of those that is vying for the championship. And if I can open by saying you had to pick him up from a dreadful Silverstone.
Yeah, Silverstone just couldn't have gone any worse for us. We scored a single point for Paul. You know, Paul's been so dominant all year, winning the first 4 races. We went to Silverstone with a 22-point lead in the championship, and we left with, I think, a 4-point deficit. So, yeah, it was a hard job to pick us both up, if I'm honest. We worked so hard for this. We both do, and I really want Paul to win. But yeah, Paul's come back here. Spa's a great circuit. It's a real driver's circuit, a man's circuit, I think, and that suits the Silver Goat.
The Silver Goat, that's really unkind. He has also been racing in the European Challenge this weekend as well. Was that a deliberate ploy to give him track time here at Spa-Francorchamps?
Yeah, sure. Any advantage we can get at the moment, we need to. You know, it's a really close battle. Our main competitor, Paul Simpson, was doing the same. So, you know, we had to match him. Paul was not shy about that. It gives a bit more track time. We're not doing the racing. We basically treated the testing and the qualifying as an additional sort of test session. So we did the qualifying session this morning. We out-qualified Paul Simpson by 2.5 seconds in some tricky conditions. I'd love to say we're going to do the same in this next session, but I think it's going to be much tighter than that.
My final question to you, because I know you need to go and motivate him for the qualifying session to come. Of course, his position on the grid is utterly important. You want pole position, but of course, with pole position, it carries 1 point as well, and that point is ever more critical, isn't it, Fulv?
Yeah, when we're so close, again, there's two points in it at the moment, 2 points, and every point will count. Having said that, we know we have to manage the risk. You know, yesterday in the race, we wanted to go for a move on Chris Smith. It would have gained us another 2 points. Yes. I told Paul to hold position for me. The risk to pass versus not finishing at all was the right decision. Qualifying, however, we need to be as far ahead as we can. If we can get in the mix of the Pirelli car as well, that may help. Every point's going to count. Likewise in the race. It's going to be a really close weekend.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, and good luck to you and your driver. So there's Fulvio Musi. He is the driver coach to Paul Hogarth, one of those drivers as the cars begin to make their way out of the garages now and head down the pit lane, awaiting the green light on the final qualifying session of 2023 for Ferrari Challenge UK. I don't know about you, Mark Werrell, I'm pretty excited.
Absolutely, it's going to be an epic qualifying session and one that could be critically important, as was alluded to, an extra point for pole position, both in Trofeo Pirelli and in Coppa Shell as well. And when the margins are so fine, particularly in Coppa Shell, then that extra point could be all important come the totting up after this afternoon's race. So really looking forward to this one. We saw a debut win in the series yesterday for Faisal Al Faisal. He claimed his first win of the season. We also saw a first win of the season in Coppa Shell for Robert Rees, so he will be absolutely delighted with that one. There's Peter Hunter getting ready to head out. You can see beautiful conditions. Spa-Francorchamps is about 33 kilometres southeast of Liège. We're about 75 kilometres east of Brussels, in the middle of the Ardennes forest. The circuit varies enormously from its lowest point to its highest point. It's over 100 metres in terms of variation. Nice warm temperatures as well. Could be very different in September, but we've been blessed with good weather. 22 degrees air temperature. Track temperature keeps rising at the moment, 31 degrees, and hardly any wind, a very, very light breeze. That's all, so ideal conditions. We did have overnight a little bit of heavy rain overnight, which means that the circuit needs to rubber up again a little bit. It was quite heavy, the rain, overnight, but it's all dried up now. The track is in perfect conditions. Plenty of fans here looking forward to this qualifying session for Ferrari Challenge UK and Ferrari Challenge Europe here, of course, this weekend as well. So who's going to come out on top? Yesterday, it was Andrew Morrow, the championship leader, that qualified on pole position. He'll be looking to see if he can do that today. The light's gone green at the end of the pit lane, and they will all begin to pour their way out. Now, what we did see from some of the drivers yesterday was they did a few more laps on their Pirelli slick tyres than they wanted to do, because the tyres that you use in qualifying are also the tyres that we'll use for the race. So the quicker you can get that lap in qualifying, the less laps you'll do, which means you've got more tyre life for the race. So it all becomes critically important, not just to get the time in, but to get the time in nice and early. And don't just keep pounding round there, because what you will do is take more life out of your tyres, which means you'll get a larger drop-off come the race later on. So you can see them all trundling their way out of the pit lane. There goes Paul Hogarth. We spoke to Fulvio Musi, his professional driver coach, and as they all head out there, plenty of room around this 7-kilometre circuit, 4.35 miles, to find a bit of spare tarmac and get going. There's Stuart Marsden. He had a few issues yesterday, so the nose of the car is a subtly different colour. It's pure black carbon fibre today. But great work by the team to repair that car. There's yesterday's race winner, Faisal Faisal. He was on a huge high after his win yesterday. We've seen great pace from Faisal all season, and as a result of that win for him yesterday, he moves ahead of absentee Graham Dazil, who's not in the entry list for this weekend, and ahead of John Dillon. So he actually moves up to 4th in the championship standings, Faisal Al Faisal, when we did the mathematics earlier on this morning. Problems yesterday that befell Stuart Marsden and Paul Rogers. Paul Rogers was collected by Stuart Marsden, who made a mistake, held his hands up and said, I made the mistake. But unfortunately, Paul Rogers, when the incident occurred, he suffered a bit of damage to the bone in his ankle. So he's feeling slightly second-hand today. He did say he was going to drive to the circuit, see how he felt. He did say he was going to go out in qualifying, see how he felt. I think he's got his ankle strapped up, but he's feeling slightly under the weather today. And I think one car that unfortunately can't continue in the weekend is the Grey Paul Birmingham car of William Tewier, the number 23 car. I don't think we'll see out in this session. I think his car had a problem yesterday that means that he won't be able to continue in the session over the course of the day. Everybody else, though, is out there, and they're all on their out lap currently. There's Lewis Plato. He's driver coach to Carl Cavers. He's just moved out of shot there, did Lewis Plato. Very quick driver in his own right. Carl Cavers has been working with Lewis for a good couple of seasons now, not just in Ferrari Challenge, where they appeared last year for the first time. They race together in other series as well. And all of the professional driver coaches are a fundamental part of Ferrari Challenge UK, bringing on their respective drivers. That calming voice in your ear that you need, but equally as much that voice in your ear that, you know, when you need to push, they tell you to push. And that's only half the job. It's going through the data, building the confidence, understanding where the driver can go quicker. So Hans Sickens is out there on circuit representing HR Owen, and Han is on a flying lap at the moment. He finished just off the podium yesterday in 4th position, but he has taken wins over the course of this season. 2 wins so far, 6 podiums for Hans Sickens so far this year. He's the first of those to head on to a flying lap, and is pushing on as he heads up the Kemmel Straight, uphill all the way from Radion up towards Les Combes, the top part of the circuit. Onto the brakes, flick the car in. It still goes uphill through that section, and then you'll hold the gear all the way through the second part of Les Combes and up towards Malmedy. And then you get to the highest point of the circuit, and the circuit starts to drop away again down in towards the braking area for the hairpin at Bruxelles. So onto the brakes. Looks neat and tidy so far. He's on a good lap. Slightly slower through the first sector than the championship leader Andrew Morrow was, though. Not by much. We're talking literally thousandths of a second. So good start to the lap for Hans Sickens as he now starts to head downhill in towards Double Gauche. You can still see the few little damp patches on the circuit as well. So it could well be, if there is the odd little damp patch that's in the shade, such as the tree-lined nature of Spa, not so much tree-lined as much nowadays as it was back 30, 40 years ago. You can still see the odd little bits are in shadow. Then it may well be that the most important lap of this qualifying session could well be the last lap that you do, because the track is just going to dry up and dry up and dry up, which means the circuit will evolve. There'll be more and more rubber laid down, and therefore the times could continually just be chipped away at. So it'll be interesting to see whether these drivers that get a lap in early, whether they then park the car in the pit lane for a little bit and come back out for a further roll of the dice. So Hans Sickens building the speed as he comes out of Stavelot up towards Blanchimont, where they will just dab the brakes briefly, heading in towards Blanchimont. You should see the brake lights just flash on. There you do. 6th gear, though, through that section. Reach 7th gear on the run up towards the bus stop. and they're approaching 160 miles per hour at this point. See the nose of the car dip. As Hansikins, neat and tidy, avoids the sausage curb on the right and the left-hand side. Patiently gets on the throttle on the way out of the corner. Now he is quick through Sector 1 and Sector 2. He posts the first flying lap of a 1 minute 33.054. However, Andrew Morrow, at the wheel of the number 4 car, is ultimately quicker than anybody through the first and the second sector, so he could well be heading towards an early provisional pole position. Jonathan Satchel gets a quick lap in. Andrew Morrow, though, makes a mistake coming out of the bus stop, and therefore that compromises his exit speed coming out of the bus stop, and also compromises his speed heading in towards the braking area for Les Sources. So it's compromised the start of this lap for the number 4 car. So Andrew Morrow only 4th, 5th quickest now. There's Paul Rogers. That's the man who is feeling slightly second-hand today. Injury to that ankle, which was concerning him overnight. He's yet to take to the session is Paul Rogers. So just waiting patiently. But unfortunately, oh, that's a big incident. And that, by the look of things, is Paul Simerson that's had a big crash. Now, I thought I saw something coming from the back of Andrew Morrow's car. Now, it does look as though there might be fluid being dropped, but Paul Simerson has hit that and has had a big, big accident at Les Sources. And unfortunately, he's not the only one that's got caught out on what I would imagine was some coolant or something down there. But you can see the damage to Paul Simerson's car. He's out of the car and absolutely fine, which is always the good thing to see. Just holding his back a little bit there, but for Paul Simerson, he would have been just caught out on, I think, probably a little bit of fluid that might have just been placed down on the circuit. So the session is red flagged, clearing up to be done. And yeah, you could just see that Paul's feeling slightly second-hand. Here, I think we're going to see a replay of it. Yeah, the car just skitters off all right into the barrier. That's a big, hefty impact for Paul. The Ferrari, as ever, stood up beautifully well to the impact. But I think that's all as a result of whatever has happened there, and problem that's befallen Andrew Morrow, who stopped out on circuit. So with the red flag, let's head down to the pit lane and Dave Richardson.
Oh, my goodness me. That, if you needed any more drama in what is going to be a really, really important qualifying session, Mark, my goodness me. Now, you caught that. I was heading towards my camera person, so I actually missed it, and I know you've just seen a replay. Is your impression that maybe Paul got called out on some fluid around La Source?
Yeah, I think so. I think when Andrew Morrow was on a flying lap and seemed to make a mistake coming out of the bus stop, which cost him what arguably would have been the fastest time in the session, but as he then braked up towards Les Sources, I thought I saw a puff of liquid out the back. So I think Andrew Morrow has stopped on circuit with something having had an issue with the car, and I think, yeah, Paul Simerson was caught out on that fluid. He wasn't the only one, because somebody else also had a spin as well on the fluid. So unfortunately for Paul Simerson, wrong place, wrong time.
Oh, goodness me. And of course, Paul Simerson, one of the championship contenders, of course.
Absolutely.
Now, the strategy that you were talking about earlier on, which I think is absolutely right, Mark, is that if the session had run to the normal that we expected, you would expect the drivers to go out on a set of used tyres from yesterday, get their eye in, do a few kind of installation laps before coming in to get new Pirelli P0s on the car to go out. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the very fastest of the lap times would come towards the end of the session. Now, of course, all this, the dice has really been rolled, hasn't it? Because now, with a red flag very, very early on in the session, who knows what the strategy is going to be now. So naturally, I'm going to try and find out. But before I do that, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to grab a word with Paul Rogers, who hadn't yet made it out on track. And I just want to speak to Paul Rogers, and he's always very kind and will always speak to me. Number one, first of all, Paul, of course, what's happened, we don't like to see, and we've got the session red flag. But fundamentally, how are you this morning?
I'm okay. I'm just worried about Paul Simerson there now, because that was a very, very heavy impact front on. And I mean, I saw him sat down, so he looks like he's okay, but I think he may be winded or he could be injured. I fractured my ankle yesterday in the same corner, and they've just passed me medically. They've strapped me up and passed me medically to do qualifying, and then hopefully I can race, because I can push 110 on the pedal. But I'm more worried about him now. I hope he's actually okay. I believe Andrew Morrow's car burst a radiator and spilled fluid, so Paul arrived on the scene straight on.
It's just wrong place, wrong time.
Praying he's absolutely fine, you know.
Well, I want to talk about that, Paul, because with the greatest of respect, you've been involved in some incidents this year, unfortunately, and the integral safety of the 488 Challenge Evo car is such a good and safe racing car. if you're going to have a bad one, to have one in one of these cars, do you know what I mean? I was so glad, and I think it was at Snetterton, and my memory fails. You're out of the car. We've seen Paul out of the car. Yes, he may be winded. Of course, that's what we all want to see, that every driver is perfectly okay.
They are. I mean, they're as safe as any GT car because they've got such a fabulous roll cage and chassis around you. The engine's in the back, so if you get it from the back, you've got something behind you. There's not a lot in front actually, but then you've got that kind of collapsing front. That's the way it's designed.
Yes.
But they are. I mean, yesterday my bump had about 100 mile an hour bump from behind, and it flew me into the gravel. And watch your back. And
thanks, Paul. Saving me. Look.
The impact wasn't too bad, but I did bang my ankle on the pedal. Unfortunately, I've chipped a bone. I've done something, fractured it. But that's what's happened there. I don't know what. I'm just hoping he's fine. The cars are safe. Yes, they are. But you're still really worried for the drivers. I mean, that's me mate,
Well, and do you know what? You make a very good point there because, and Mark will agree with this, as we tour the paddocks around the world in various series, but most importantly in Ferrari Challenge in North America, in the UK, and also in Europe as well, the camaraderie and friendship that there is in the paddock is not experienced anywhere else. I mean, Ferrari just do it really properly, and you guys and girls make the difference because, yes, of course, when you're out on the track, you want to be a winner, Paul, as indeed you have been. But actually, when you're back in and the crash helmets come off, you're all buddies.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we all have a beer together. We drink, eat together, we do whatever. We speak to each other in between races. We meet each other. There's some time to have driver nights out and stuff. Just particularly in the UK, I think it's probably the strongest because one nation, of course, where Europe people are spread out between different countries. But I know quite a few of the European drivers because I've done 7 or 8 European races, and they all come to see me this morning. How you doing? Because of my accident, which is nice. But that camaraderie is actually that's why I race. Okay. Because I would go and race something cheap, something cheap like a Mini if it wasn't for the camaraderie. And we're all, most guys here are business guys. They've made a few quid, they can afford to do this, and they're nice, intelligent people.
And I remember, and I won't keep you any longer, but I remember you telling me the story. I mean, your relationship that you have with your driver coach, Sean Doyle, is amazing, and Sean is a great guy. And you go on holiday with him.
Oh yeah, he's been on holiday with us as well. I mean, he's almost like another son in a way. We've been me and my wife went shopping on Friday, yes, and we bought him a shirt and some presents. I mean, it's you have to look after your coach because he has to look after me.
And he does. And Paul, glad that you're going to be out in the car today. We're really pleased about that, and we wish you the best of luck. There's Paul Rogers, who very graciously spoke to us then, Mark, as we got that situation. Now, I'm going to go off and try and find some others. And as Paul has said, of course, all our thoughts are making sure that Paul Simerson is perfectly okay. And what I'm hearing is that I think Paul is okay.
Absolutely, yeah. We saw him get out of the car, and yeah, he just looked as though he was just holding himself a little bit as he came out of the car. So whilst Dave wanders off in the pit lane to grab a few more drivers, let's look back at some of the highlights from yesterday here at Spa. So a win for Al Faisal yesterday in Trofeo Pirelli, and a win for Robert Rees in Coppa Shell. Those are the highlights from yesterday. Dave Richardson is back down the pit lane, and I think this time he's got Jonathan Satchel alongside.
I'm doing my level best here, Mark, and Jonathan Satchel very kindly has agreed to speak to me. Of course, qualifying session has been curtailed fairly early on for reasons which we would really rather not see. Of course, all of us. I can tell you that to the best of my knowledge, Paul is okay, and that's the most important thing. Jonathan, actually, as you'd gone out in qualifying, I thought from your initial runs you were doing okay, friend.
We were 3 laps in, Dave, so who knows? But the sadness I've got is I've just seen Simo's car go past on the home straight, and it doesn't look good. And we needed this wonderful build-up to this finale between the 2 pools, so I hope it doesn't curtail that. That's probably the most important thing today. But I've stuck the new tyres on now. We've got 23 minutes left when it goes green, and I'll go and see what we can do.
And that was the thing I was going to ask you, Jonathan, if I may, and that is that normally the strategy when it comes to qualifying is that you go out on a set of yesterday's tyres, you get your eye in, you get the car in, and then about halfway through the session you come in and change to a new set of tyres, which of course have got to last you not only the end of qualifying but also the race as well. Presumably many drivers will think like you, and they will use this stop as the time to change those tyres, because it's such a long lap here, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like quite a few are. Hahn doesn't seem to be. I mean, look, we still got 23 minutes to go. My view was that I'm getting the benefit of the cars sitting on the warmish brakes, and so they're heating through the wheels, so I'm getting a bit of temp into them. And who knows what the right strategy is? I'm going to give it a go.
As always, Jonathan, it's great to talk to you. We wish you the best of luck for qualifying and for the race as well. Mark, ferret-like, I'm going to go out and dive in and try and find some more people. In the meantime, back to you, my dear friend.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, we've just received confirmation that the session will restart. It's to be confirmed as yet, but at 12:46 local time, which is still 9 minutes away at the moment. So there's still a little bit of clearing up to be done. And of course, it's not just the cars. You can see on the screen there that down through Eau Rouge and Radion, one of the most daunting corners in the world, they are having to put down some cement dust or some dust to soak up the coolant, by the sounds of things, that was deposited down through there. So as if the drivers didn't find Spa challenging enough, one of the most daunting corners in the world might also be a little bit slippy when we get the session back underway. So we'll wait for the session to come back underway, and we can just look back at some of the slow-mos from yesterday. Cars looking fantastic around Spa-Francorchamps. The Ferrari 488 Evo Challenge cars are things of beauty and look so graceful under slow-mo conditions. So we're clearing up being done. Let's go back down to the pit lane and Dave.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. I have just pulled Stuart from Paul Simerson's dealership, and the last thing in the world probably Stuart wants to do is to talk to me. Of course, we're concerned, you're more than a little bit concerned about your driver representing your dealership, who does such a great job for you. And of course, for the championship chase, this is just not the way we wanted qualifying to go.
Look, it's irrelevant. The race is irrelevant, isn't it? You know, I just hope he's okay. He looked like he got out of the car. He sat on the floor, so fingers crossed that he'll be absolutely fine. We're going to go down to the medical centre now to make sure he's okay.
Well, as soon as you find out, please come and tell us, Stuart.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Stuart then is from Great Pool Birmingham then, Paul Simonson's dealer. So we're looking at some of the cars here. This is the number 69 car of Chris Smith. And I can see Chris Smith and Charles Rainford. Now, Charles is driver coach to Chris Smith. I'm trying to encourage them to come over here. This is on the hoof, as you would expect. And here's Charles, first of all. Then hopefully we'll talk to Chris, his driver. Obviously, session suspended, and we never like to see that, of course. And we're all checking. To the best of our knowledge, Paul is okay.
Yes.
And that's what we want to hear. What have you done to Chris Smith over the last couple of rounds, Charles? Because my goodness, he's doing well.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to give all the credit to Chris, really. The work that he's putting in behind the scenes is just incredible.
By work, what do you mean, Charles?
I mean, as in a simulator work with me. He's working on his diet, he's working on his running, his fitness. It's the whole package. So it's really great to see that we're just getting stronger and stronger. Plus, you know, everything I say to him, he just listens and applies. So it's incredibly rewarding to work with Chris, and he's doing a fantastic job.
I have to say, when I've talked to other driver coaches in Europe, in America, and also in the UK, every driver coach tells me you want your driver to be a sponge.
Yes, exactly.
What does that mean?
That means we all have a feeling about, you know, driver coaches. We've done a bit of driving, so we know the feeling. Yeah, we know the feeling that we're trying to get our driver to feel. And as a driver coach, you go out in the car and you immediately feel the balance of the car. And by way of sponge, we mean we just want that feeling from them. If we could get them to just, as a plug into our head and transfer all the data across, that'd be the most ideal world. But you've got to use your words, and it takes time. But yeah, I say Chris is doing a fantastic job, and I'm just very pleased with the progression.
Well, we'll catch up with Chris in due course. Thanks for talking to us. There's Charles Rainford then, who, yeah, he's hiding his light under a bit of a bushel there, Mark. He's a very successful racing driver in his own right, and a very good driver coach as well. I can see William Tare, we are, sadly not in his racing suit, which we would like to see, but unfortunately William not contesting this qualifying session or indeed the race to come. Let's just carry on down here and see who else we can pick up on and find where we can, as you would expect of me. Mark, working as hard as I possibly can, but we do know the session is going to restart, and I don't know whether you have any intel in terms of when the session is going to restart yet, Mark.
It's going to be about 3 minutes time, so 12:45 we hear. They are just in the process of blowing away the cement dust that's been put down on the circuit. So they've got the tractor out there. You might be able to hear it in the background, Dave, blowing away the cement dust. So, you know, as ever, it's a busy time out on track. Even though there's nothing going round, we've got the marshals, the circuit staff, all trying to get the track back into raceable condition.
Okay, I am going to dive in and see if I can grab a quick word here with Julian Dye. Excuse me, David, I'm so sorry. Can I grab a quick word with the old campaigner, Julian Dye, who into Ferrari Challenge for the first time in 2023, and he's blowing that on my neck now, Julian. That's not fair, is it?
He can stop blowing then. It's only to keep me cool.
Julian, absolutely fantastic that you're with us in the Ferrari Challenge. You've hit the jackpot here. You're racing at one of the most iconic circuits in the world here at Spa-Francorchamps. You've had a dream year, haven't you?
I couldn't tell you how good it's been. I think Le Mans and then Spa has been absolutely one of the iconic tracks, two iconic tracks to be fair. I've had such a great season, loving it, and yeah, and the guys are doing a great job, and yeah, big smile still. Dave.
Well done, Julian. Enjoy the quali session. Do well, friend, and thanks for talking to us. Mark, at that note, I think I'm going to hand back to you because I think I've probably got as much as I can. I'm going to try and find out just to make sure everything's good with Paul Simonson. But for the moment, back to you.
Thanks, Dave. Brilliant work as ever. We're probably only now about 60 seconds away from potentially seeing a green flag being waved and the cars heading out onto, of course, another outlap and getting, for most of them, really just a flying lap time in. We only had, what did we have? Some 6 cars that actually did a flying lap before the red flag came out. So Hans Sickins was one of those. Paul Simonson, who, of course, had that incident, was another. John Dillon, Chris Smith, Jonathan Satchel, Stuart Marsden were the cars that had set fastest laps. That man there that we're looking at, Carl Cavers, had not, and he is a driver that mathematically could still win the championship. He is 11 points adrift coming into this qualifying session of Andrew Morrow. But the big question is will Andrew Morrow be able to get the car out in this session at all? Because he hadn't done a flying lap. His car obviously had some sort of issue, and you can see him there chatting to his professional driver coach, Johnny Kane. So If the car is coming back into the garage area, they might be able to work on it quickly to get it back out. If not, then our championship leader could well be starting off the very back of the grid, and that is a twist of fate that we certainly couldn't have anticipated coming into this weekend here at Spa-Francorchamps. So we are now green in the session, so the green flag has been waved, the pit lane is open, and you can see now cars are starting to trickle their way down the pit lane. The clock also now starts to tick away, so John Dillon is just being strapped into the car. John, who is one of the few drivers prior to this weekend that had previously raced here at Spa-Francorchamps. He had taken in some challenge races in the past here around Spa, whereas for the vast majority of other drivers, it is their first racing experience of Spa-Francorchamps. There we can see out of the pit lane nice and quickly is Hans Sickens, and he, at the moment, of the cars that had posted flying laps, of which there were only 6, he had posted the fastest flying lap, 2 minutes 33.054, but pole position, if it's anything like yesterday, pole position will be around about 6, 7, 8 seconds quicker than that. So 2:26.384 was the Andrew Morrow pole time from yesterday in Trofeo Pirelli, and the pole time in Coppa Shell from Robert Rees was a 2 minutes 28.814. So, you know, sort of, those are the kinds of times we'll get down to. But of course, for many of the drivers, so we've got the fact that there was the heavy rain overnight, which will have washed away some of the rubber that would have been deposited out on the tarmac. So that means the circuit needs to rubber up a little bit more. There's still the odd little damp patch out there. They now also need to explore the parts of the circuit that have just been treated by the marshals and establish how much grip there is there. So it's all a case of rebuilding that confidence again, and knowing the fact that, yes, there was some coolant or something down at that part of the track, but it is as grippy. It might not look it, but the grip is there. Or the case might be it's not quite there as yet. So we'll wait and see. So again, it's this process of a couple of laps in the bank. Just make sure you've got a bank a lap in. If you're running those fresh tyres, make sure you utilise them well so that you get the quick lap in nice and early. But there you can see, yeah, round through Eau Rouge and Raidillon, one of the, say, most daunting corners in the world on any circuit. You can still see the dust that's floating around. So that will head on to the tyres and might just take another little bit of the straight or a little bit of a corner to get that away from the sticky tyre. So Paul Rogers getting ready to go in, say medically passed to qualify. Hopefully his ankle injury won't prevent him from racing later on today. We've got a few cars on outlap. Hans Sickens is on an outlap. John Dillon's gone out onto the circuit. Jonathan Satchell, Stuart Marsden, Julian Dye, yesterday's race winner Faisal Al Faisal, and Peter Hunter are all of those that are on an outlap currently. Chris Smith has yet to head back out onto circuit. Chris, who last time out at Silverstone took his first win of the season and actually finished on the podium in both races at Silverstone, a win and a third in Coppa Shell, and those are his 2 podium finishes so far this year. So he comes into Spa-Francorchamps on a high, and as we heard from Charles Rainford, just getting quicker and quicker and quicker all of the time. And it's an interesting dynamic that Charles was talking about. It's not just what you do in the car, it's equally important what you do out of the car as well, whether it be diet, whether it be simulator work as well, and all of this feedback that's coming from your pro when you go through the data, putting it into practice as well. And that sounds as though it's an easy thing to do, but sometimes what they're telling you is slightly counterintuitive. But you've got to trust the pro and trust that the car will do it. The 488 Challenge Evo Spec car, brilliant car. So Hans Sickens is on a flying lap now. He is slightly slower through the first sector than he'd previously gone. We are already a third of the way through this slightly curtailed qualifying session, so a 30-minute session. 20 minutes still remain, and most of the cars still as yet to register a time following the incident that befell Paul Simonson. A bit of a sideways moment there, you could see there as he just worked his way through Lefagnac and up towards Campus. So he'll then head down in towards Stavelot, and then from there it might not look like it, but once you get to Stavelot it's a slight incline all the way back up to the end of the lap. Doesn't look like it on the television, but it certainly is. A slight incline all of the way as you head up towards Blanchimont, which is, say, not quite taken flat out, but it's still 135 miles an hour through that left-hander. Certainly on these brand new qualifying tyres, if they've bolted them all on, they will be. And then up to a VMAX of about 160 in towards the braking area for the chicanes. You can see the brake discs glowing there as Hansikin gets the car stopped and rotated beautifully in towards the corner. What might he be able to do here? He's quick through the middle sector, is Hansikins. His first flying lap before the red flag was a 2:33. That's a 2:32. 2:32.717 for Hansikins, which means for the moment the HRO in entered car tops the times. Now Faisal Al Faisal will be on a high. He claimed his first win of the season yesterday for himself and for HRO in as well. So he's another representative of that dealership. And fresh from the win yesterday, could we see Faisal Al Faisal grab his first pole position of the season? He's not had one as yet so far this year. He's always there or thereabouts. He had a couple of poor qualifying sessions at Silverstone last time out there. He started one race 11th, but finished third, and started the race on the Sunday 13th, I think, and with a couple of grid drops for other cars. Ultimately, you could argue he started 11th because other cars, he qualified 13th, but other cars got grid drops. Now, on this lap, Jonathan Satchel is looking as though he is pushing on by the look of things. We heard from him in the pit lane. He got a bit of a track limits warming at the start of the lap, but has done a 2-minute 37.483. And he's going even quicker this time through. Faisal Al Faisal heads back into the pit lane, so an out lap for him. John Dillon, in the meantime, who had a drive-through penalty yesterday, so finished a little bit lower than he would have wished. He finished 8th overall. That's 5th in Trofeo Pirelli. For the man who's raced Ferraris for a good number of years, he's had a best of a couple of 4ths so far this season. We've not seen John on the podium, but he'll be hoping that he might be able to mount a challenge in qualifying, and he's going well actually, is John. Hansikins slightly slower through the first sector, but the number 61 car is probably the one to watch at the moment, because he is quicker than he's previously gone through the first sector and has set an absolute best through the middle pack sector, the number 61 car. Hansikins is slightly slower through the first sector than he has previously gone, and slightly slower through the second sector, so I don't think this is going to be an improved time for the provisional pole sitter. As John Dillon does go to the top of the times, so we haven't seen the lap. The 2-minute 30.345 for John Dillon puts him to the top of the times. As round through Blanchimont goes Hansikins, erstwhile pole sitter now. The lap time that John Dillon has just put in was 2.3 seconds quicker than Hansikins has managed so far. So it's the Grey Paul Nottingham car that occupies the provisional pole, and Hansikins heads in towards the pit lane. I thought he'd have bought the lap because the sector times just weren't coming for him. So 16 minutes of the session to go. We're almost at the halfway point now. Peter Hunter has set a flying lap, a 2 minutes 38.966 is his best so far, but he's slightly quicker through the first sector of the lap. The first sector brings you from the start-finish line through La Source, down through Eau Rouge and up through Radion. It's the end of the Camel Straight up towards Lecombe is the first sector. The second sector brings you from Lecombe through Malmedy and Bruxelles, Double Gauche, Le Fagnes, and just before Stavelot, which is where he's just exited, is the second sector of the lap. And then the third and final sector brings you from Stavelot all the way through Blanchimont, through the chicane and over the start-finish line. So John Dillon, fastest of all. He's going even quicker on this lap, is John Dillon. So he heads out of Speaker's Corner and up towards Double Gauche. Flat out through the second aspect of it. Nice and neat and tidy, doesn't use too much of the curb. And as he is on a flying lap, let's go back down to Dave Richardson, who's in the pit lane.
Well, someone unfortunately marked that he's not on a flying lap because his car is in the garage. Here is Andrew Morrow, of course, one of the contenders for the 2023 Trofeo Pirelli Championship. What's going on, Andrew?
Yeah, look, disappointing start to qualifying. Still not quite sure what the problem is with the car. I think maybe a water pump's gone. So just trying to get to the bottom of that now. But yeah, look, hopefully they can get the car fixed right in the race. Tough job ahead, but see how we go.
So, quite clearly, it's not a quick fix. You're not going to be out for any part of qualifying. That means, sorry to say, Andrew, you're going to have a lot of overtaking to do, which you're pretty good at, if I'm honest, when it comes to the race.
Yeah, tough job ahead in the race, but look, it is what it is. At least, hopefully, we can get the car fixed and back in the grid, and then we'll have a fighting chance. Heard there a short time ago, Paul had a bit of an accident in turn one, so hopefully he's okay. I think maybe he caught some of my fluid, so...
I think that is the general consensus. That's what happened. I mean, certainly not malicious, you know, it's one of those things.
Yeah. No, look, it's unfortunate, but I hope all's okay.
Yeah, as we all do. Thanks so much for talking to me, Andrew, and I hope that the team working very, very hard to mark on the Andrew Morrow car. We're going to see him in the race. We're probably not going to see him again in this qualifying session.
Such a shame, Dave, but I always try and look for positives out of negatives, and because he is coming into this race here 11 points ahead of Carl Cavers, Andrew Morrow really simply just needs to finish the race later on. As long as the car is running, if he finishes the race, even if Carl Cavers wins it and gets the extra point for pole position and gets the extra point for fastest lap, they would be tied on points. And if they're tied on points, you go to the countback, who's had more wins. Well, at the moment, Andrew Morrow has had 3 wins. Carl Cavers can get to 3 wins if he wins later on. You then count back on how many seconds they'd had. They've both got 2 second places, so it's still, you know, more than doable for Andrew Morrow, even though potentially he could be off the back of the grid. So Paul Rogers is out there at the wheel of the number 29 car. He is pushing on. Hopefully his ankle after his incident yesterday is feeling fine. John Dillon is still topping the times, and through the first sector of this lap, he has set an absolute best first sector. The pole time now is 2 minutes 29.829, but he could well eclipse that further this time through. So through Double Gulch she goes. Grey Paul Nottingham car. Remember, he's not had an overall podium so far this season. Oh, ran a little bit wide there through the second aspect of Double Gulch, just beyond the curb line. You have to keep a part of the contact patch within the white lines or within the yellow and red curbs where they are, and he was just beyond it there, so that could well be a track limits warning for him. We'll have to wait and see. And he is looking to see what he can do as he heads through sector 2. Is he going to set another purple sector? No, slightly slower through the second sector than he has previously gone, but it's still a good lap at the moment for John Dillon as he builds the speed up towards Blanchimont with 12 minutes still to go through the left-hander at Blanchimont. Make sure you hit your marks in the braking area for the bus stop. Avoid those sausage curbs both on the right-hand aspect of it and on the left-hand aspect of it, and then just make sure you are gentle with the application of the throttle coming out of the corner. Otherwise, the car will very quickly remind you that you are pushing a bit too hard. So what does this lap look like for John Dillon? Is it going to be any quicker? It is very slightly... No, it is quicker. It is 2 minutes 29.696 from him that time through. So 1.9 seconds quicker than Paul Rogers, who, despite feeling a bit second-hand, is second quickest at the moment, and he's bottled up behind Carl Cavers, who I think must be on an outlap, is he? Yes, he is. So the number 51 car of Carl Cavers, who mathematically could still win the Trofeo Pirelli Championship, is on a flying lap. Carl yesterday did more laps than he said he really wanted to do on his Pirelli tyres. So he'll be hoping that he can knit a good lap together nice and early this time through. So he's on an outlap. We've got Chris Smith going well on this lap as well. The number 69 car, that's the blue and the purple machine. So Paul Rogers is backing away from Carl Cavers to make sure there's a bit of daylight. So he will head on to a further flying lap. So those two head up towards the braking area for Eau Rouge. But for Chris Smith, he could be on for a stellar lap here. Absolute best through the first sector. He's gone quicker through the second sector than he's previously gone. The number 69 car heads round through Blanchimont. I think it is ahead of him on circuit Hans Sickins, but that car is not going to compromise the run that Chris Smith will have in towards the braking area for the chicane. So just nice and neat and tidy as you come out of the chicane for Chris Smith, and he could have knitted together a very, very respectable lap here. Over the start-finish line he will come. He's 8th quickest, and he goes 2nd quickest. Grey Paul Birmingham car with a time of a 2 minute 30.456, about 3/4 of a second shy of the pole time of John Dillon. But that is a brilliant lap from the Coppa Shell driver. Now, the other car we need to keep an eye on now is Carl Cavers. He had done his outlap at the wheel of the number 51 car. That's the red car with the Dayglow yellow flashes to it. In the pit lane is Jonathan Satchell. There's his professional driver coach, Chris Diamond, chatting to him. But for Carl Cavers, absolute best through the first sector of the lap. Nice and neat and tidy as he heads out of Speaker's Corner and descends downhill towards Double Gulch. Car right the way over to the curb line. You see the nose of the car dip as he pitches the car and rotates it through the first left-hand aspect of it, flat out through the second left-hand aspect of it. Stay within the curbs, make sure you don't compromise track limits there on the exit of the corner, and then up towards La Fagna. And then from there, once you've flicked your way through the very similar sort of right and left bends, they are similar in terms of the angle of the pair of them. It's just that one's a right-hander, one's a left. It's onto the brakes through Campus and then down towards Stavolo. What does the second sector look like for Carl Cavers is the question. Absolute best through the middle sector as well. Quicker than anybody in the session, both through sector 1 and through sector 2. Carl Cavers, as long as he gets the braking point right for Blanchimont and then up towards the chicane, he could well be heading towards a provisional pole position here with 8.5 minutes just over of the session still to go. So Sun glints off the cars, he flashes his lights to a car ahead of him, but I don't think he's quite going to catch it when they head in towards the chicane. And indeed, that car pulls in towards the pit lane anyway. I think it was Stuart Marsden, but for Carl Cavers, this looks like it was neat and tidy enough through the chicane. Is it pole? Yes, it is. 2 minutes, 25.482. That is a brilliant lap, and it's around about 9/10 of a second quicker than the pole time from Andrew Morrow yesterday. So brilliant lap from Carl Cavers. He did say after qualifying yesterday, he'd left a bit on the table. He'd taken more life out of his tyres and still didn't get quite the lap that he wanted. Well, surely that's the perfect lap. You can see just how much the car's moving around there as he takes as much curb as he possibly dare through the chicane. But for Carl Cavers, purple in every sector. The perfect lap, absolute best through the first, through the second, and at the time, through the third sector. Hans Sickens, in the meantime, the number 16 car, has gone second quickest. Faisal Al Faisal, yesterday's race winner, is as yet to register a time in this session. He is on a flying lap now and has gone through the first sector rather respectably. So the lap is starting to come together as he heads through Nefania and then starts to work his way towards the right-hand corners at Campus and Stavolo. And then when he heads out of Stavolo, that's where we'll pick up on what the second sector looks like for him. Is it coming together neatly, the lap? Yes, it is. Not bad at all through the second sector of it. Not quite as quick as Carl Cavers has managed so far, but quicker than Faisal Al Faisal has done. And where is this going to put him? I would say second or third. It's certainly going to put him on the front 2 rows of the grid. At the moment, he is 15th quickest in this qualifying session. That's only because he has not set a time. And he's the only driver that's out there now that has not set a qualifying time as yet. Hans Sickens back out for another go as well to see whether he can improve upon second position in this session. He's gone slightly quicker through the first sector than he has previously gone. Faisal Al Faisal goes third quickest, so that means that John Dillon drops to 4th. Now what can Hans Sickens do? Can he further improve? He would need significant improvement to take pole position away from Carl Cavers. Carl is at the moment 2.3 seconds up the road from anybody as a result of that pretty much perfect lap, one would have thought. Be interesting to catch up with his professional driver coach, Lewis Plato, and see what Lewis thinks to that lap, because it certainly looked like a pretty much perfect one. But for Hans Sickens, he is heading round through the right-hand kink at Stavolo. So critical to use all of the track but no more at that corner, because the gravel trap is very close to the edge of the curb line nowadays, but such an important corner to get cleanly out of, because you carry all of that momentum through the slightly uphill slog all the way towards where he is now, where the brakes come on through Blanchimont. Now there is a little bit of traffic just up the road for Hans Sickens, which is Paul Rogers. Hans Sickens will continue the lap, and in the meantime, I think Dave has got some more news from down there in the pit lane.
Well, I hang on your every word, Mark Werrell, and what I'm going to try and do is get hold of Lewis Plato, who of course is Carl Cavers' driver coach, and as you can see, he's busy talking data at the moment, but I will interrupt him. And normally Lewis is very, very kind, but his car and his driver have just come in. We'll get right out of the way of the Carl Cavers car. So I did ask Lewis at the conclusion of that Carl Cavers lap, knowing that he had probably taken more out of the tyres yesterday than he wanted to, is he going to bring it in and park it now? And that's exactly what Lewis had advised.
Yeah.
Carl and Lewis work so well together, and I know you were mentioning pre-show, Mark, not only do they work as driver and driver coach, but they also race together as well, so they have a real understanding of each other. And I'm going to try and grab either Carl or Lewis. In fact, Lewis is heading towards me now. To heck with it, you know. I don't mind being told off, Mark Werrell. And so Carl is taking a look at the data right now, and Lewis is comparing the data with him. And as soon as Lewis looks at me, I'll try and grab him and grab a word. But as you can see, at the moment, he is talking to Carl. Now, what I don't want to do is take time away from you, Mark, because you're calling the session here, and there's still drivers out there being very, very competitive. So it just looks to me like Lewis is going to be pretty involved in that conversation. So for the moment, all I can tell you is that Carl has done exactly as Lewis indicated he would. He's brought the car in, he's parked it, and hopefully he won't have to go out again.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we'll hit the pause button on that interview. We'll catch up with him, I'm sure, later on, because we've still got 4 minutes of the session to go. And we've got Hans Sickens has set an absolute best first sector this time through. He did improve his time on the previous lap as well. He still remains second quickest with a 2-minute 26.842. But Hans Sickens, quicker than anybody has been in this qualifying session through the first third of the lap. Well, he's about to conclude the second third of the lap. And what does the second sector look like? It's quicker than Han has previously been as well. Not the best, but quicker than he has been. So what is the third sector going to look like? We've also got Faisal Al-Faisal at the wheel of the second of the HRO in cars, the number 76 car, going quicker than he has previously gone through the first sector. So we're certainly not done and dusted yet for the final qualifying session of the 2023 championship season. Onto the brakes comes Hans Sickens through the bus stop, nice and neat and tidy. A little bit of a slide, maybe mid-corner there, but I don't think he'd have lost a great deal of time, but he lost a little bit more on the exit. He was a bit too keen with the application of the throttle. The tail end of the car just got away from him, and as he comes through, it is a lap time that's still quicker than he's previously gone, 2 minutes 26.378. That's 9/10 of a second away from pole position. And I think he's perhaps decided now, just looking at the body language of the car as he came through La Source, that that's about all he's got and doesn't want to take any more life out of the tyres. But is he going to start on the front row of the grid? Because the sister car from HRO in the hands of Faisal Al-Faisal, the number 76 car, is quicker than it has previously gone through the first sector of the lap. So Faisal Al-Faisal, buoyed by the win from yesterday, is looking to see whether he can find enough of an improvement to eclipse the time of Hans Sickens. But for Faisal Al-Faisal, didn't string the middle sector together. He's probably about a second away than where he ought to be in that middle sector. So the lap time is starting to get away from him with 2 minutes remaining. He's got the chance for one more lap if he wishes to do it, or maybe he might be on the radio and they'll be looking at the delta times that he's done through the sectors. May well be that his driver coach is saying it's not going to come together. Do you want to take another lap of life out the tyres? No, we don't. So we'll come into the pit lane, we'll abort that lap, and Faisal Al-Faisal then at best is going to line up third on the grid. So the pit lane slowly filling up with cars. I can see that Carl Cavers is now out of his car, and we've still got a few cars out there that could still do something. Hans Sickens is on a slowing down lap. John Dillon is still out there at the moment, but I think he is not exactly looking towards improvement this time through. Jonathan Satchel is out there at the wheel of the number 7 HRO car that runs in Coppa Shell. He is also going slower than he has previously gone. And I think we've also got Julian Dye and Stuart Marsden out there, but again, Julian Dye going no quicker. Stuart Marsden is, though. He comes over the start-finish line and goes 10th quickest, improves with a time of a 2 minute 32.873. But I think that's probably most of the drivers now done and dusted in this session. I can see Peter Hunter stood there pointing at the television screen and laughing away. He is going to line up 7th of the Coppa Shell cars. And also just taking off his crash helmet is Paul Hogarth, who will be more than pleased that he has claimed, by the look of things, provisional pole position in Coppa Shell, 4th quickest overall for Paul Hogarth. We didn't really see a great deal of his car in that qualifying session, but for Paul Hogarth, that's exactly what he wants. He picks up the extra point for pole position, assuming nothing changes in the remaining few seconds of this qualifying session, because there are still cars out there circulating, seeing if they can improve, but sector times suggesting that we're probably about done for the session now. So checkered flag will be out for the next car over the start-finish line. And for Carl Cavers, it's looking as though he's heading towards another pole position. Replay of the session, John Dillon getting things rather sideways, gathers up the moment at the wheel of the Greypool Nottingham car, but for John Dillon, he is 4th in Trofeo Pirelli. Qualifying has finished. Let's go back down to the pit lane and Dave Richardson.
Listen, if anyone is on a hot lap and you need to interrupt me, Mark, Mr. Werrell, you do that, okay? But I don't think anyone is going to better Carl Cavers' time, so I'm going to try and steam in and speak to Carl, if I may. Here is Carl Cavers, and the camaraderie there is in this paddock, which I talk about so often, and Carl there in conversation with Philip Morrow, father of Andrew Morrow. You know, he's a competitor to you, a big competitor to you. I know, knowing you as well as I do, Carl, you don't want to see his car in the garage.
No, I'd rather try and beat Andrew on track if that was possible. Certainly don't want to see any cars in the garage. You know, we've come a long way to Spa. It's a fantastic track. We're all enjoying it so much. And hopefully Andrew will be out for the race anyway.
Yeah, of course, and you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to try and get on your bottom, isn't he, Carl?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll make short work of everybody else behind and get on. Very quick in Sector 2 yesterday, so I expect the same later today as well, yeah.
Well, as it stands at the moment with the finished, I don't think anyone is going to take away that Rotiform pole position award from you, Mr. Cavers. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Very happy about that, thanks.
Best of luck for the race, Carl. Thank you for talking to us. Right, we're going to do this on the hoof, as we do, and thanks to Sarah and my team here that are working so hard with me, I'm going to try and grab Paul Hogarth, who, of course, has, I think, done enough, Mark Werrell, to be P1 in terms of and Coppa Shell. Absolutely, Dave, yep. Right, let's steam in here then and see if I get told off by Full for his driver coach, Paul Hogarth, Paul Hogarth, Paul Hogarth. Please, you will be the first man to say you don't want to see Paul Simpson in the gravel, of course. He said exactly the same when bad luck befell you. Sure. The strength of friendship in the paddock in the Ferrari Challenge UK Series is enormous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a horrible thing to see, and you know, that's not the way any of us want to race or be competitive, so I feel really sorry. I don't know, you know, the extent of the damage to his car and everything, but I saw him out, so all good, I think. The news we have, Paul, is he's perfectly okay. Great, yeah, and he's a super fella. You know, he is a real amazing guy. He's much nicer than me.
Now, the thing is, at the start of the session, you knew you'd got to go out to that session and you'd got to try and get that point. You've done that. Let's look at the positives. You know, you delivered great laps. You had a torrid time of it at Silverstone. You've come and you've put that all behind you. You've done a great job today and yesterday, Paul.
Yeah, no, I'm really pleased. I did really want the pole today, and, you know, I'm glad we've got it because of all the oil down and bits and bobs, but no, I'm over the moon, over the moon. One more bit to do.
Yes, of course. A Rotiform pole position award on its way to Paul Hogarth. Well done, Paul. And just behind us here is Peter Hunter. Look, and Peter is another one of the jokers here in the paddock. Come on, I didn't look at the timing screen.
Give me a kiss.
No, I'm not doing that. Where did you get to in quali, Peter?
I finished.
No, right.
I didn't crash. Okay. No, I think 11th grid overall.
Many congratulations. Your first season in the Ferrari Challenge. You've been a great asset.
Yeah, you've been every chance I get, but it's learning off guys like Hogarth and Simerson and that, which was such a shame to see that happen to him today. Yeah, so, but no, thanks.
Good luck for the race.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for talking to us, Peter Hunter. There we have it. I've brought you both the pole position drivers. Mark, I'm going for a lie down.
I never doubted for a second that you wouldn't bring me the pole sitters in each of the respective classes. So Carl Cavers, Hans Sickens and Faisal were the top three in Trofeo Pirelli and the top three in Coppa Shell. Paul Hogarth, Chris Smith and Robert Rees. That's all from qualifying here at Spa-Francorchamps. Remember, we'll be racing later on today. We're due to get our final race of the season underway and crown our champions around about 4 o'clock this evening. From Dave and myself, Mark Werrell, join us for that later on. Goodbye.